In the face of a potential World War III, another time for deep introspection approaches us, as it should ideally happen during every single moment of our lives, but especially during those most difficult situations that we and the world may be facing. Thus, let's reflect on war. To be honest, war has not started these recent days. War is always going on, and not only as an escalating military world crisis, as we have seen in both past and present, but also as a multitude of other types of warfare in the realm of the economical, the political, the digital, the physical, the psychic, and most crucially, the individual. And that's where I would like to land and delve today. Beyond the specific technical details of this particular present conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and apart from all the things we as humans can do and should do, both in terms of practical action as well as committed prayer, I feel the need to share a few thoughts about the actual underlying backdrop of all war, its very root cause, and on what we may be expected to do in that connection as individuals. Because we have to remember something. It all begins from the individual, only then expanding and further escalating to the group, the state, the nation, the planet, and whatnot. To put it simply, war exists since and as long as we choose to think in terms of us and them, you against me, and so on. War exists as long as we project an illusory sense of enmity in a bipartisan way, choosing duality instead of unity. The ultimate reality has been defined in the Bhagavad Purana as Advait Gyan Tattva, or non-dual consciousness. By contrast, the cause of all fear has been depicted in this same work as Bhayam Dvitiya Avinibeshatashyat, engrossment in duality being the root cause of all fear, of all war. Is fear synonym with war or a byproduct of it? Well, war indeed produces fear, but also war comes from fear. In other words, war is fear or unresolved duality. And that duality begins at home and then spreads to every nook and corner of the planet in the form of the unending shades of battle and conflict that we witness today. But it always begins at home, ourselves remaining at war against ourselves, which is that ultimate snake we should be afraid of, us. Many predators may lurk in the darkness, wild beasts, dangerous people, even some friend who ends up betraying us, but above all, or below all, the worst possible scenario is that of self-betrayal, when we ourselves act as our own worst enemy, as only we can do, since us and only us are our own ultimate snake and our own worst possible danger to begin with, and nobody else. Thus, the first and ultimate war is against us, or better put, against all those things in us that we are not, but still determine our false sense of existence. As many of you may already know, one of the most sacred moments of spirituality was revealed in the Bhagavad Gita, in the midst of an inevitable and bewildering war, as it can only be, since the deepest forms of enlightenment can only take place on the stage of ego death, a victory that will only take place after considerable battles. Our inner participation in that sacred war will put an end to all wars, will bring the type of death that will finish all deaths by finding a universal common ground and by officially declaring war, to all forms of duality and separate interest. And we are indeed capable of reaching such a glorious victory. Indeed, all this present pandemonium is indirectly pointing at how much potential do we have to invoke peace in the world by showing us our capacity to go in the exact opposite direction. If we can go to one side of the coin, surely we can arrive at the other by using exactly the same amount of time and energy, but in a more sensitive way. And again, it all begins at home. Thus, beyond all that is to be done on so many other layers, and considering all the things we are unable to do by being physically distant from the scene of the events, situations like this invite us, every individual, to commit themselves on the most fundamental level. We must learn to stop war in our inner world. That is the earliest and most ancient of all wars, and only from there so many varieties of battle emerge. Do we really want to stop war comprehensively? If that's the case, then we should begin by ending all forms of war with our own selves. Otherwise, if we could do something more to stop our inner war, but we are doing nothing in that regard, then we are still hypocrites on one degree or another. Maybe even using and denouncing these external wars as an evasive device to not deal with the inner war that is still going on in our own hearts, and which is, in part, a cause for every other external world that is taking place outside of us. Because remember, whatever is happening outside always begins inside. Be the change you want to see in the war.